Good afternoon, everybody. You are tuning in with Mandy-Lynn at Local 107.3 CFMH, your favorite only community radio station. I am really excited today to talk to you. We have a great episode planned. Our last episode that we had was your 34th Premier of New Brunswick, Mr. Blaine Higgs. So thanks everybody who tuned in on that. Thanks to everybody who tuned in and listened to Angela Campbell talking about Imperial Theatre, talking about the importance of arts and cultures in the space of the arts. If anybody out there had any questions and additional about where to book tickets or get them online, then you could please check out Imperial Theatre website. I am joined here today by the CBS Late Night Show Junior Vice President or Senior Vice President, Nick Bernstein. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hi. Right away, immediately starting off with goofing on my title. I really appreciate that you are watching the show and enjoying it. Thank you.
Nick, we are huge fans of yours over here. If you can't tell by our background, we are huge fans. And the mandate today was to kind of talk to you a little bit about what's been going on over at the show, because I think it's great that during the pandemic, you guys have branched out. I wanted to kind of talk about how you guys have branched out as a show, but how you found a way to, I want to say, how you guys were able to create your own atmosphere within an atmosphere. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a great question. So, when the pandemic hit, and obviously it's still ongoing, but I, like so many people, and currently we're working from home, and James started doing shows in his garage by himself, which was it's a very strange thing for someone who's a comedian who's used to an audience to be completely separate from everyone and doing jokes in a vacuum. It's wild to watch, but they took it on, and he wasn't alone doing this. All the late night hosts were doing this in this vacuum, and there's like a real honesty there, because we were all learning how to use this. I'd never heard of Zoom or Teams before we had to do, everything from home.
Right.
At a certain point, though, CBS gave the okay for James to go back into the studio, and I was still working from home at that point. But they created this really cool space that was safe for everyone. It was still before the vaccine was available, so it was, I think, fall of 2020. And James finally got a chance to spend time with people. And the people in the studio happen to be all the people who work on the show. So it's a lot of people whose names you know now, whether that's Rob Crabb or James Longman, Ian Carmel, Lauren Greenberg, the band, Reggie, obviously. And then camera folks who never often get a chance to be on television too. And yeah, fins up, exactly. Pete and Mark and the whole gang. And you got to see the personalities of all these people who are clearly funny, who work in comedy, work on these shows, enjoy each other. Even if you'd never heard of them before and never saw it, you know what the show is. And I think the one of the fun things about late night always is it has to constantly change and evolve. And sometimes that's because people change, and sometimes it's because situation changes. And it happened at a point where the show was ready to go all in on this change, and the audience was also ready to watch this. And so just being at home and watching it through my computer was a blast. It was so much fun. And I would say 2/3 of us were watching it that way. And we'd all have like a separate chat during the show talking about stuff that just was cracking us up and callbacks that were happening. And it was just sort of like a lively side chat while the show was going on. And I don't know. I just there was just something kind of it's a maybe a, I don't know, too sappy of a word, but it was like there was a little bit of magic happening in that space, and I think the longer we were doing it, the more you could tell.
Absolutely. And so did this, the way that we see it is that it kind of evolved. Like it started as something, and then you guys were like, hey, we're on to something. Like, so you've, by creating the atmosphere in the atmosphere. And I think it even resonated well the folks that were watching, you know, your bits that are when you were at home where it was, is this a pet or a pillow? Or like, how did you come up with like, like, it's something so absurd, crazy, but it's so like great because people are always like when you're on camera, when you see people doing these weird things. I mean, who talked me through who thought of that?
So some of the first few bits that were done really wasn't me. I'm more of a passive observer when it comes to how the specific comedy segments are chosen and then executed. There's a whole comedy producing group that puts those together. But during that period of time, when so many of us were at home, they were trying to figure out how to do bits that were offshoots of things that we had done in the studio. So, do things exist in a way that feels similar, even if it's via Zoom? And now we're all used to watching multiple boxes of human beings' faces. So does that work? And so whether it was like pet or pillow, or does this person play an instrument, or we did a live Tinder, I think, over Zoom.
Yes.
And I think once they did like a whole musical comedy bit with the Muppets, essentially over Zoom, pretty difficult. I think the biggest challenges at that point were probably in the edit and how they captured all of that video and how they edited it to look good. And we all know videos freeze on us. So do we have to stop somebody during a moment? Do we have to have them re-say something? Or do we all sort of like go with the notion that camera's going to freeze every once in a while and we got to get through it? Which once again, one of the good things about having already done 800, 900 episodes of television by that point is there was a shorthand with the group. So as we're learning some of the new process, we also recognize these shows go on every day. And so we have to be malleable. We have to move quickly in order to get it on the air.
Absolutely. And a lot of folks out there also notice and love the relationship that you have with James. And this goes back to, I guess we'll talk a little bit about the lie detector test and where he kind of put you on the spot and put you up there to find out about. So a couple of the questions for you is one of them is, who do we know yet who put the horse picture in the hallway? That's a big one going around. That's the buzz in Canada. You know what? If you were to ask our daily news in Canada, that's what everybody's talking about right now. They're wondering who put the picture there.
I don't know still who put that up. There must be somebody who knows. They haven't told me. This is the thing that's wild. Like I have a decent title. It sounds all fancy. There's quite a few people that have like VP or senior VP titles amongst the CBS executive ranks. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they tell me everything that's going to happen when I'm doing things or when they've asked me to do things on the show. Like I did not know I was going to be given a lie detector test.
Oh, you really didn't? That wasn't a bit?
No, that was not a bit. Nothing's a bit. Like
the horse. Did you know about the plastic horse?
No, I did not know about the horse. I obviously knew, and I had agreed to dress up as a jockey. I say they made me dress up as a jockey. They correct me by saying they asked and I accepted. I don't know which one is it. But I have lots of this is when you realize, like, I think I have a lot of friends on the show, but I have no one who I'm close enough with who's going to let me know, hey, by the way, they're going to have you do X or Y, like sit on a giant plastic horse.
And that Dr. Phil's going to be giving you a quarter to race that horse. Like, you don't know that coming in. This is all, so you're getting it at the same time as the viewers.
Yeah, it's all being processed in real time and happening in real time. So, they edit things here and there so that you see the best of it. But I did not know any of those things. And I still don't know who put up that photo, which still is on the wall in the hallway. And I found out also that someone put that same photo or version of that photo on the in the hallway of the president of CBS Entertainment also. So I'm on multiple floors.
And how did you get notified of the other one? Was it the president that sent it out to you?
He
Or
did.
were you walking by one day and you're like, oh, nope. So there I am on a horse. Like, how did that come
about? I haven't been on that floor yet. They're actually on a different campus than where I'm located. So I haven't seen it, but I've had several people send me the photo of the wall, including the president, who said, I can't even get away from you." Yeah, it's both mortifying and I do find it hilarious because the way I always picture these things, which maybe I've said before, but if I've always loved late night, right? So like I'm a fan in general. I've always found it
especially of Conan.
I do really enjoy Conan. Um, uh, uh, um, but uh, if when I'm a viewer or if I'm a listener of somebody like Howard Stern and they're incorporating all these people who are behind the scenes who end up becoming unwittingly part of the show,
Yeah.
I think that's really fun. And so I recognize as potentially embarrassing as some of these things could be, or I am a fairly quiet person in general. Like I've never been one to try to seek out this type of attention. I recognize that it's more fun to play along, and I don't mind being a good sport about those things.
And no, you certainly don't. And then so the day with the lie detector test. So you think that you're going in, you think you're just going to sit in your chair with the camera, I guess that has nobody in it that's just there on you. And you think that you're just there. And then all of a sudden, James starts calling everybody out about asking about it because that's the big gossip around the office and then around the set. And then so when he's calling you up, that's really when you're hearing about it for the first time.
Yeah, like they went so far as to not include anything in the script because I get the scripts every day and I get the rewrites every day, but they kept it out of the script that this was something that was going to happen as well. And so I, even as honestly, even as James is doing sort of the preamble, I thought he was just going to talk about that now there's a frame photo of me on the wall, which like that's embarrassing enough. It is
Right.
so weird. I can't describe to you how weird it is to walk down a hallway and I mean they showed it, but like it is pictures of James with all these like absolute superstar people on the wall, and people pass that hallway all the time, and not everybody watches the show. So
So they just walk by and they see you on a horse. So somebody that could.
It's just so strange, and it's like got to be even weirder in the other building, where I'm in between, like professional photos. I guess that's a professional photo of me, but that's a little different.
Oh, no, it looks great. It does look great.
Terrence, you gotta give shout out to Terrence, our photographer. But there's like the glossy photo of Madam Secretary and then Bull, and in between those two photos is me on a fake horse. And, like it makes no sense, and there are people that are pitching shows that'll be walking past that, and like someone must stop and be like, what is this? What happened here? No wonder they're selling. Like this is just so crazy.
But has anybody walked by and saw it yet? Like, so any of the recent guests that have come by that have been in the last week or two, like, has anybody come on and been like, oh, and there's Nick? Like, who was it that said a few weeks ago or last month that they felt bad for you and they're like, are you okay?
That was the first time that's happened. That was Anna Kendrick.
Anna Kendrick. That was hilarious.
Once again, I did not know that was going to happen. no, the segment producers who I talk to pretty much every day, none of them told me that this was something that might happen. And no, I had no idea that she watched the show, let alone knew any of us, and was going to end up talking to me. But like this sort of evolution is really strange in general, because I am now, like you said, I had a locked off camera for a long time that was just on me. It's not quite that way anymore. It's a little bit different because the setup is different now with an audience than it was before we had an audience. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I have to show up early to the studio now because I have to put on a mic every day, which is really, really strange. I mean, I literally, like, I sat in the control room. That's where I watched the show for 6 years until this all happened. And now I have to wait to get mic'd. And they do that because you just don't know when James might talk to me. But it happens often enough that they decided.
Pretty much. You have a very big fan base now. You have one over in Canada as well, and that's what people are waiting for. So when James says you're arguably the most popular person on the show, I mean, people are waiting to see like what you guys are going to get into. People are waiting to see what brands are going to be mentioned on the air, how you're going to react to it. People are waiting to see what your input is on something that, talking about horny t-shirts on air, to see with, like, I think that like people want to see how you're going to react to it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, all those things. By the way, I still don't know who gifted me a horny tee. I'm not sure how that happened.
Maybe it was Ian.
I figured he would say something by now. One of those shirts I cannot wear. But I guess it was nice that someone thought enough of me to gift it.
Wear it inside out to the show. Wear it inside out on the next show.
It's I'll have to consult people before I can do something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's very nice of you to say all of those things, and I still kind of feel like this is all pretend. We're all just in boxes on computers. I think that the fan base. Sorry, that's my dog.
That's my fan base. The dog.
I think that in general, like, people are fans of the show, and I think that's really great. And I think that there is an honesty that happens, especially in that Act 1, where it is a bunch of friends that are talking to each other, that is really enjoyable. And I get that, and I see it, and I feel it when I'm in there. And we all have a really fun time while it's happening. And that's palpable. But like, the fact that anyone knows who I am is just silly. Like, it doesn't really gel with my brain. I think I'm happy that it's happened sort of in like my midlife, because I don't take it very seriously. It's just like a fun thing that happened. And it's like a little footnote to my career or something.
And what's it like in public now, like with your family and stuff? So you were just recently in New York, I think, with your family over the holidays. Are you getting recognized at airports and places that you go now, or is the mask helping like hide some of this?
I have been recognized a few times. It's not a regular thing.
Yeah.
But it's happened, and everyone's been very nice. And I think they're just, I think they're just really excited to see anyone from the show. Like, it's the same thing. Can you stop? Can you please stop? Sorry. Wally looks really...
Pet her pillow. If that's a pillow, I'm afraid.
Hi, dog. Come here, buddy.
We need to see it now, because if you're yelling at a pillow, I'm worried.
He's super cute.
Oh my, hi. Nice.
He's really nice most of the time, but he's also, we got a nice slash naughty. Yeah. Depends on the day.
Hi.
But yeah, I'm sorry. So you asked me, being recognized. so like again, it's only happened a handful of times, and not less than a handful of times. And the people are really nice. I think the strangest things that have happened are less that like one or two people noticed me and wanted to say hi, because that's happened to many. That's happened to quite a few people like within the realm of the show.
Sure, of course.
During our Thanksgiving week, I was invited to multiple Thanksgivings in random parts of upstate New York, in the hopes that I would just pop by a Thanksgiving celebration, which it is. I wrote to them like, that's such a flattering offer, but like, how am I supposed to tell my family
Yeah,
that
that you
I
have to skip there.
to go and spend time at someone else's family Thanksgiving? And that seems that I think there was a lot of recognition that like, yeah, that probably isn't going to happen.
And your family got to make a cameo now on the show, so that was pretty cool. We got to meet your dad, Big Bernstein, behind the scenes. What did he think about it?
Yeah, that was once again when you asked like, did I know something was going to happen? I absolutely had not a clue.
That wasn't a bit either. That wasn't
Yeah.
like you were literally just, and then James was like, let's kick whoever's out of it. Nick's a piece of shit for not being on it, whatever he said. And then all of a sudden you're there, and then he's like, show us if that was not a bit.
That was not a bit. No, that was all real. So so I'm watching. I had a pretty good idea that they would talk about the empty chair, that I was not there,
They
and
had
they
a
would.
camera right on it.
Yeah, they did.
Because you left Wednesday. Wednesday, they kept saying, we're like,
right.
okay.
That's right. So I figured like I couldn't get away with just not being there and that going unnoticed. That's just not the way the show works anymore. I had not a clue that they were going to ask me to turn my Zoom camera on so that I would be in the show. And then all of that happened in real time. I was like, he asked me first to like lie in bed with my computer, which
the laptop beside you. Go ahead. Like we're all just gonna wait, and we have to wait. Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's silly. Like I'm going to dinner. And then James said, bring us down. And so as I'm bringing the computer down, my family isn't even realizing or recognizing
oh my
that
God,
it's going to be on television, because it doesn't sound like something that should be on television. It sounds like a warm up or just two people talking.
Right.
And so I think my dad, especially, just was really loose about it all, because I'm not sure he realized until afterwards that segment was going to be on TV. But he was also pretty happy about it. Yeah. I also think
he's witty too. He's very witty. Like he would like so off the cuff where he was talking about the contract negotiations, I think, and then right away he's like quickly very witty.
It was a good line that he came up with on the spot. Very proud of him for that. And I'm pretty sure he reads the YouTube comments now to see if anyone talks about him.
And if it saves CBS some money. Him bringing it up there, he's like, did we save money?
That's right. So that was, like none of that on that first day was a bit. The second day obviously was a bit. That was the second day they asked if I would lean into the idea that I was getting pampered at home. And so my niece and nephew were also there by then, and they were quite excited to be on television as well. So I figured so that's a very unique Thanksgiving. And by the way, like I hadn't seen, it had been more than 2 years since I'd seen all of those people together at the same time. And so that was great in and of itself. But then to have this sort of extra helping of silliness, courtesy of the Late Late Show, I think really just upped the ante for all future Bernstein gatherings.
Of course. And so what did your dad think about being on TV after? Like, was it when you hung up from the call, were you like, hey Dad, by the way, the world's going to see you?
Yeah, he didn't seem to mind it. He seemed pretty into it. I think he was curious to know how it would look the next day, and he did. I mean, he said it on air, but he does wake up in the mornings and watch the show online. So he might have ended up seeing it before I did. Actually, well, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Right. And then and so I guess I have a couple questions to ask you about James. So there's he gave gum to Adele and chewing gum to Adele that she framed, and that story went, crazy everywhere. And did you ever consider framing your gum and giving it to somebody?
No.
Like,
No,
could we find that on eBay?
Yeah. I don't think it would have the same type of resonance as
Celine Dion.
But I'd never heard that story until then. I didn't know that was the thing that had happened. Yeah, that was I thought that was really funny. I mean, it's cool. Like, James has really great rapport with so many people, and a lot of that is real and based on the reality off camera of relationships that he's fostered with people, oftentimes many years before they'd even gone on to some of the wild successes like Adele has. Like, they'd known each other, I want to say, like 15 years ago or something crazy, like way, before the first album, I think, that she'd done. So it's really cool when that happens, and you can see that on television. It happened not that long ago too, with like, we had Andrew Garfield and Jamie Dornan as guests on together, and those two used to live together in LA, and so they were telling all these stories about living together, and James had known them when they were like first starting out, and like, that is some of the joy of late night, I think, is still seeing and hearing some of the stories that come about because of friendships.
Yeah, it's pure. And so I guess I have a few shows to ask you about that some of the viewers want to know is when Tom Cruise and James jumped out of the plane, like how does that work out? Did he come to you and was like, "Hey, I think this show we should jump out of a plane. Are you in?" Like, how does that, like, do you mind? There's no legal technicalities behind it, right? We're good to go tomorrow. Or like the airplane with Kanye West, like a lot goes into that, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, they do. I mean, the field production unit uh, is some of the hardest working people who put together and come up with ways to do things that you just don't expect.
right.
Any show, especially like, we're on at 12:30 at night. I know we're like, you can see us anytime, anywhere, but the 12:30 show is not supposed to be able to do the, 6-figure stunts. And so part of that is the willingness and understanding of the network to invest in the show, and some of it is just that's the aspirations that James and Ben and Rob and James Longman and that group have to keep on pushing the boundaries and coming up with interesting things to do. So with Tom Cruise, that was probably the third or fourth sketch or segment that we had done with him, and it was one of those. He was doing one of the big stunts from that movie, that Mission Impossible movie, was I think, jumping out basically from space, right? It was like one of those. It was a crazy scene.
Yeah.
So because of that, that was sort of the question. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I'm pretty sure it did come from the Tom Cruise camp, that it's like, here is something that we do. Is this something you would want to do? And several years earlier, when we first were starting the show, James asked the network and me, he said, let me jump out of a plane as a promo for the new Late Late Show. It'll be amazing. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way that a network or studio is going to let their star of their new show do something that dangerous before the show even starts. And then the headlines would be mortifying, let alone, you have to protect your talent. That is part of it. However,
one of the contracts, yeah.
4 years in, several, like you've established what type of show you are. the safety protocols that you have in place. When it's someone like Tom Cruise, who might as well at this point be a professional when it comes to stunts.
I know, exactly, exactly.
And so he's working with the best team probably in the industry. Then at that point, it was really just a question of can you get all of the insurance in place to be okay with this, and it's not going to cost so much that you're going to spend the next 6 months in the studio without being able to do anything else.
Yeah. No day trips, no field trips.
Right. Yeah, no more lunches. I don't know. And they were able to figure out how to get all of those things done, and then you cut to this like just spectacular piece of television.
Right.
And one of the things which they have talked about on the show before, which is also kind of amazing, is the director of that piece. His wife went into labor during the shoot.
During the yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. That's just like, you can't make those things up. It's wild, like just the arc of that piece, and you show that to when it's sort of like when you're asking talent to do things,
right?
And then you're like, all right, well, you really gonna say no to this thing because we got like Tom Hanks on the first show to do a roll call of all of his biggest roles in all of the movies.
It was fabulous. I know, just off, and so such a great idea.
And you get like, I mean, it was phenomenal. They did an incredible job with that piece, and then especially right out of the gate. And then like that same week, it's like you got Mariah Carey to sing in a car with you and do all of her biggest hits, and then a couple years later, like, well, we jumped out of a plane with Tom Cruise. Like, we're game. We're like, what do you want to do? Let's do it. And
what's next? Kanye West in a plane.
And then Kanye, I mean, like that was quite a spectacle too. Like just to get finding the plane, finding the place that you can fly, having the like amount of time that you can be in the air while that's happening, and then being able to land. Like I don't even know all the ins and outs of how they got that going, let alone like I think it was 100-person
choir or something.
Kanye choir. Yeah. So and
it's Kanye. Do we question Kanye? No, because it's Kanye. He'll find a way, right?
It was one of those things. It was one of those things where you just like you just hope the day of all these people who have said that they were going to do the thing
are going to
come to show up and do it, and it was just like it's one of those pieces that it's both like incredible to watch and also
be a part of.
The sound in that plane, like the acoustics, is incredible.
Yeah. And what about taking the prince to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? So say that. Let me try that again. Blah blah blah. Taking Prince Harry to the house of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I mean, that was inspired. That's really credit to.
What idea was that?
It was. I'm not sure specifically who's the person who said let's do this, but it was a combination of Ian Carmel and Lauren Greenberg and James Longman.
Sure.
Those three often are the ones who, the writers, producers, and Longman's a co-EP, and they just keep on sort of pushing to figure out like what are the craziest things we can do with Prince Harry, and what are the safest things that we can do also, and
to be COVID compliant, of course. Yeah, that was genius.
Cool. It was so funny, and you just don't know, like there were people, James among them, who had a relationship with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and like I don't hang out with that gang anytime.
Oh, you don't?
Regularly. I'm not like I've never met Prince Harry before.
So you weren't just with Kim and Pete Davidson at lunch. You're not leaving lunch with. Okay.
I mean, Wally even left me, my dog. So I that's not my scene. But so I don't really know how how long ago they sort of established a friendship beyond just sort of a acquaintanceship, but they clearly had enough to allow Harry to trust them that he will look good in these situations, and he also still gets to talk about sort of the serious thing at the time, which was still ongoing. Which, you know, like, it's wild to leave the UK and start this essentially a new life in California. And so it's one of the cool things that always has happened on the Late Late Show when James is in this intimate setting with people, that they can have real conversations and you see something that you might not see otherwise in a comedy show, which I think also really, yeah, Paul McCartney, exactly the same thing, to an extent that, you know, like, it's one of those days that no one who was there will ever forget that, and you know, resonated throughout the world with so many people. It's pretty amazing when that can happen again off of a show that, like, it's on at 12:30 at night.
And is that kind of like, I know that James said that you guys had kind of the gist of what you would do and what McCartney was comfortable with, what Paul was comfortable with doing, but was there like, did you guys know you're going to stop at Penny Lane and Paul's going to sign there? Did you guys know you're going to go down the streets, or is that kind of just you go with it?
They didn't know everything that was going to happen when it happened. There were a handful of things that were set up. I wasn't there that day. They actually they had a weekend. They had a weekend separate from when the show traveled to London, that they shot that. They had the footprint of where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do, but recognized that it was Paul's day. So he was going to determine where they wanted to go, or how long he wanted to spend time anywhere. And if he changed his mind, they would go with the flow. So just so happens, I think they did everything they ever possibly wanted to do and more.
Sorry for the sirens. The show's getting too hot, I guess.
And I think they weren't necessarily aware that or expecting that massive crowds would necessarily be coming when it happened, but it's almost inevitable that, like, as soon as word spreads that Paul McCartney is in your neighborhood, I think people are going to pop out and you see the cameras. It's kind of inevitable, and that's happened on multiple comparable carpools. You know, the sort of, like, big surprise, which they did on the show, was him performing at that pub with the band, which was so cool to watch and see. And anybody who was in there there were a lot of people from Fullwell, the company that co-produces the show with CBS, and that's Ben Winston's company and James's company. So, you know, as many people as could crowd into that as possible. I think they all were there. And I mean, I think everybody could have a favorite moment, and they're all right, because it was like, it's a really beautiful piece of television.
And speaking of favorite moment, what is your favorite moment since the birth of the show? And you're coming on to how many episodes?
Our 1000th episode is on Wednesday of this week, which is December 8th. So yeah, we're hitting a pretty epic number. I honestly, it's hard to pick a favorite moment. I don't think in those terms very often. I have episodes that I truly loved. I have experiences that I've had on the show that I've really enjoyed. I think some of the most exciting things for me always on TV is, like, the unexpected things that happen on the show. So, so early on, like I think week 2, the James took the show out of the studio and did an episode in someone's house.
As one does. As one does.
Typically, you get to
Yep.
meet the neighbors. That was the whole point, was you got to meet the neighbors. And so, so he did that, and he did it. I just found that to be a thrilling episode of TV, and really silly, and it felt big and also small. It's all the things that I kind of enjoy about late night. And then he did a second one, which was also really fun. Anytime the show travels, I really enjoy it. So these London weeks have always been great fun. Anytime we do something with athletes, I think it's pretty exciting. I like seeing people out of their element, being able to be funny. And so we've done bits with Steph Curry, where we played mini golf with him, and he sang, Disney songs in the car with James, and I really enjoyed that moment. And then, quite honestly, how the show really has found this new Act 1 over the course of the last 15 months or so has been, I think, as exciting and gratifying as almost anything else that they've done in those big situations, because that is just that sort of natural evolution that we talked about a little bit earlier, that I find incredibly exciting about all these shows. That, if you look at like the history of something like Johnny Carson, not comparing the two, but Johnny Carson's show in 1965 was different, significantly different from the show in 1983 and 1991. And, he still might have come out and told jokes at a monologue spot, but the world changed, he changed. And I think that's, you can say the same thing about Howard Stern, and who he was in Detroit compared to who he is now, who he was, in New York compared to who he was on Sirius XM. So I think when you really like someone and you get to spend time with them in that way, and you're along with them for the ride, and you see how they've changed, I find that really exciting. I think it's why people feel so close to the hosts of these shows, is you feel like you have grown with them and watched them grow.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more than that. And also the fact that a lot of things are homegrown, authentic, like the way that, most shows are trying to create the image or the background that everything's perfect going along there. And you guys, and what makes your guys' show so successful is you show, when there's no batteries in the mic, or when the camera's in the wrong place and James is like, hey, where's he going? Hey, or like you guys are specifically, or when they forget to spell your name after a show, or you guys are willing to show that stuff. And that's what makes, I think, it great to everybody, because they're like, good, they're not perfect either,
Yeah.
But talk about that.
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive sometimes, because more often than not, you feel like these shows are professional and you don't want to show the seams. Right. And to do a 180 on that concept, and really not in a ironic way, to just be as open as possible and as real with the audience in the studio and at home as possible, is I think it's a bit of an intoxicating experience. And
great choice of words.
Yeah, we all, well, yeah, oftentimes I guess it really is, depending on the band. And again, these are things that I learn on air, and I'm like, well, how does we let this happen? And I hope nobody who is a boss of mine is watching this right now. So far, haven't been in trouble. So we'll knock on something.
But James likes to call that out. Like the day that I think you and Rob Crabb were late coming in, or who was late coming in, he likes to specifically make sure everybody knew. Like, we wouldn't have noticed at all, but he's like, hey, by the way.
So there was a day that I came late, to the show because I was literally, I had to pick up my kids from school. There was not a bad emergency, but I was emergency isn't even the wrong word. There was.
You had to be a parent. You were a minute late because you're a dad.
Basically, it was one of those things.
Right.
I wasn't expecting to pick them up, and then I had to, and so I thought I'd be on time, and I wasn't. But I thought, okay, well, I missed the beginning of the show. I was texting or calling people while I was on the way to say, like, I'm 5 minutes away. Do you want me to come in or not? And so I started on purpose at that point outside of the studio, and then Rob texted me. I didn't know what was happening in the studio. He's like, well, you should come in now. And so I didn't know what he had been talking about until I walked in. And then once again, not unlike some of our conversation earlier today, there was a new writer who had started that day.
Oh,
and
no.
She thought that whole thing was a bit. She thought the whole thing was a bit. And I was like, no, I did not know this.
I had life happen.
That's right. It was all real. Everything that led up to that moment was real. I mean, you pick anything that's happened to me is basically something that just happened in the moment. And
but you're such a good sport about it. You're such a great sport about it whenever it is happening. So the day with Oprah with the hotels. Was that everybody's asking that question? Is that like did the writers think about this beforehand, or right away James was like, no, did you really just call Oprah randomly?
That was not writer driven. That was, I think it was Guillermo who brought it up in real time.
Yep.
And then that everything that you saw, that just happened. None of us knew it. No one knew if Oprah was going to pick up or call back or any of those things. No one knew if Oprah was going to be okay with
being on the air.
Putting this call on. I mean, again, it's like enough relationships have been established that like it's a safe place, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Oprah wants to be on the show
randomly.
But that was true. Like we were all just dying off of that. We thought that was one of the funniest things that happened, and still a good idea. I think everybody maintains it's still a good idea.
It is, and we hope that you'll open an hotel over in Canada. That's the go. But then I guess a follow-up question to that would be, folks were wondering what. So he did reach out to Harry about the Queen eating French fries, and you guys never got back to anybody yet about does she like McDonald's? What was Louis right? Like, talk about that. Like, what does the Queen eat from McDonald's? Do we know yet, or are we still all waiting on the edges of our seats?
I'm pretty sure that Prince Harry replied to James, but
this is critical information that your viewers need. Is one of the questions that we'd like to let you know.
Listen, I understand, and I'm empathetic to all of the people who want to know this answer.
It's actually, I'm speaking probably for all of Canada. It's a big issue right now where we were wondering, and if you could call James right now and just ask him and let him know you're on the phone. If you could prank call him right now and ask him, say you're on with Canada, and we wondered about the French fry situation. We were nervous.
I can guarantee you he will not pick up my call. But I don't believe that Prince Harry ever actually responded to the specific question. So the question of whether or not she's ever had a McDonald's fry, that remains out in the open.
But that wasn't written either, was it? That was just you guys were talking, and then it was like, hey, I wonder if the Queen goes to McDonald's.
Right. No, that was not written. Louis is another one of those like just hilarious human beings who has gotten a chance to really shine. He had been on the show in sketches quite a few times.
Right.
But just Louis off the cuff is hysterical. And so, I don't imagine that he thought about that for a minute before it happened. There are jokes that are written that are monologue jokes that are read during the show eventually when they get to the news segment.
Eventually. I love how you said eventually.
It takes a while sometimes. And so like there is prepared material, but the everything that you've asked me about and all of the similar comparable things, those are not planned in advance.
Wow. And okay, that's what makes the show, I think, just so much more organic, so much more pure, if you will. And I guess I want to talk to you about, so the, I guess people say the rise of Nick, if or so to speak. The
Wow.
rise of Nick. And that's so I guess the best way to kind of talk about that, based on this slew of questions, would be um I think people started to really know and recognize you more when they put you on a chair, then they made your chair higher, then they made your chair higher, and then it elaborated from that to athleisure wear, where the folks, where that's when people started to really, more buzz started to come about, where people were like, well, what's his reaction? Like, oh my gosh, what's the boss going to think about this time? Talk about that, because it feels like now, it feels like the listenership and the audience and your patrons, it sounds like they're listening to see, like, are they going to mention a brand? Is Nick going to get upset? Like, talk about that.
Yeah. Um, this is this goes back to the every day is an adventure, and I didn't recognize or realize this was going to be my life going forward. When this all started out, it was one thing to be in a chair on a regular basis, which I'm not even a regular for a week, which is really how I thought it was going to start and end. That seemed like it was a funny arc and it was a nice thing. It was silly, it was a little dangerous. We were we were having fun, and then I'd go on my merry way. And then they decided just to keep the a chair available for me to sit in, and it was in direct eye line to James at the time. Well, actually, I'm still in his eye line during that segment. So anytime something came up, he could always decide to. He could do it to anybody, but he could certainly goof on me or the bit especially when it comes to brands and what we can or can't say. I guess it really started because it was easy in that moment in the summer, the early part of the summer, when it was just no audience and it was just us in the studio. You almost forget that this is actually something of this is going to be on TV. So it is really friends talking. So one of the only times that I really did truly have like to get talked to was uh, was some of the brand mentions and the mentions of the departments that I interact with on a regular basis outside of the show, and that made sense. I can understand why people don't want that to be put over the airwaves, um, and but that doesn't stop the show from continuing to do those things. And so, like, when it comes to the entire studio wearing athleisure wear, with once again without me knowing, so that part was planned, but also not telling me was part of the plan.
Where James put his feet up and rose, yep.
And I couldn't, you just gotta tip your hat. It was a good joke. It was a good goof on me, and we all, we all just continue on to the next show after that.
Well, listen, I want to thank you so much, Nick. I'm going to hit stop recording in 1 second and talk to you for a sec before you drop. But I just want to say, I speak for all of Canada, I think, when thank you so much for spending time with us so we could get to know you a little bit more behind the scenes, and kind of, just kind of get to know a little bit more about you. And we really, really love what you guys are doing, throughout the pandemic. Love the smile that you guys are bringing to folks' faces, and how you're really, everything you're doing right now is resonating, but I want you to know that it's doing that kind of on a national level. I know, like we talked about at the beginning, Malaysia you had, and now your fans us over here in Canada, who, you're like our Brad Pitt of Canada, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That is untrue, but I appreciate you saying that. And it's nice to know how many people watch the show from all over the place. It is a cool connecting thing, and I'm equally as happy to meet you and talk about the show. And just thank you for inviting me on.
Thanks so much. And the very last question, and then I'll just hit stop recording, is the very last question is, folks wanted to know, there's been a lot of questions about Ian's Corner. Is that going to be opening back up because we have folks over here in Canada that were wondering, like, how do we send
Right.
over our maple syrup or our products or, anything like that?
It's a good question. I mean, they claim that I'm the one who shut it down, which I'm not sure
That's the
that's
word on the street. That's the
true.
word on the street.
Yeah. I mean, there is some truth that like it's a little hard when you're selling national ads to spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on things other than. But I thought Carmel's Corner was a good idea, and if somebody is, I'd say just tweet at Ian and see what happens.
They can try to get their stuff on. All right, you are tuning in with Mandy-Lynn, Local 107.3 CFMH, your favorite only community radio station, joined here by the amazing Nick Bernstein from The Late Late Show. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you.